mechanic and he told me not to panic as he pulled my engine out with the wind. He's got to keep it overnight and I'm just a little frightened cause my car's going under the rim. It needs a new oil pump, fuel pump, it's always something, man. I know my wallet's gonna feel the pinch when I get to be.
This is Roger Moore, and you're listening to Classic Car Talk with Paul and Richard.
Hello and welcome back. It's Richard here again, and next to me is a man of many parts, most of them discontinued, and several eligible for scrappage rebates.
Oh, he's off.
It's the one and only Paul Guinness.
Hi, everyone. Now, we're both mad about classics, so if old cars are your passion too, then you're in the right place.
True enough, and once again, many thanks for all the messages of support. We're so pleased that you're enjoying the show just as much as we are. And a special shout out this week to listeners in the USA and Canada and Australia and the Netherlands, South Africa, Kings Lynn, Little Staunton, and in La France. Bienvenue. Just a quick word, if I may, about podcast apps. I'll be very brief, I promise. Now, I know that a lot of you listen to the show via our Facebook page, but far more of you subscribe via your favourite podcast app, which automatically, of course, downloads the show each week. And I see that the favourite apps you're using are Apple, Spotify, Castbox, Spreaker, Google Podcasts, Podchaser, Podcast Addict, and of course via iTunes, Safari and Twitter. But some of you have been in touch to say that you want to hear us on your favourite iHeart Radio. I know that's a big one, so I'm pleased to say that Classic Car Talk is now an approved show. That's approved by iHeart for quality.
Quality.
And I can only presume that they listen to the wrong show if they call this class of thing quality. But anyway, Classic Car Talk is now approved, and we are available on iHeart Radio as well as all the rest.
That is great news, though, isn't it, Rich? And with that in mind, I guess you're going to be a bit more serious and professional this week, are you?
Well, I do try, Paul, but as soon as you start chuntering on about metros, I just nod off. I can hardly be held responsible for my actions while I'm asleep, can I?
Well, probably not, but you just can't help yourself, can you?
I don't have to do this show, you know. In fact, I've just applied for a new job.
Oh, good. Doing what?
Putting up mirrors. I could definitely see myself doing that.
Oh, how did I not see that one coming?
OK, let's get straight in with this week's Classic Car News. What's happening, Paul?
Well, even though we still have a bit of winter to get through before the show season really starts in earnest, there's still plenty going on, of course. And this weekend, if you're out and about in the southwest of England, don't forget that the Royal Bath and West Classic Car Show is on in Shepton Mallet all weekend. On Sunday at Stoneleigh, there's the International MG and Triumph Show and Spares Day. And on Tuesday the 11th, it's Classic Car Night at London's world-famous Ace Cafe. And I know that this time Lotus 7s and Midgets and Sprites, they have club attendance there.
Ah, good old Ace. Well worth swinging by there if you happen to be in North London on Tuesday night. I don't know, it always feels like spring is on the way when we start listing the car shows, Paul.
It does.
Now, also this week, some rather sad news as we bid a very fond farewell and rest in peace to a fast lady. That's the title of lovely Joy Rainey's autobiography. And Joy has sadly left us after 78 years. I first met her at Prescott through her father Murray, who was himself a great racing driver. And Joy went on to be as good or perhaps even better than her father as a racer. She was Shelsley Walsh record holder and champion. She took many Prescott wins, and whether she was racing her E-Type, her vintage Alfa Romeo, her Spitfire, her many ferociously fast single-seaters, or indeed the lovely new McLaren I saw her in, she was always the one to keep up with. She was a personal friend of the legends. She knew Jean Barras, Sterling Moss, Jack Brabham, Bruce McLaren, Alan Jones was a friend. And away from racing, she had many adventures with old cars, including one crossing 7 countries in the 10,000-mile London to Sydney marathon she did in her impeccably prepared Morris Minor. But, you know, Paul, despite her fame and her success, she always had a smile. She always had time for we lesser beings. And
absolutely.
I know that she was an inspiration to many listeners of this show who admired her and loved her, as did I. And our thoughts are with Trevor and her family.
Absolutely. It's sad news indeed, Rich. OK, time for a break.
Now, unleash and feel those Goodyear G800s come alive. Safety radials for smooth speed, supple strength. They grip, control, respond. Tough Goodyear tires for total car performance, total tire life. Get off the leash and onto Goodyear. G800 safety radials. They really cover the ground.
Welcome back. 50 years old, that Goodyear ad, you know, Paul.
I know, it's amazing. It still sounds great, though, doesn't it? OK, now it's time for our regular Market Watch section. So, Rich, what's happening this week?
Well, I thought we'd go to Paris, in spirit at least, for the Grand Marques du Monde sale.
Well, I'm glad to hear you're not physically there for a change. We can't afford that, you know.
Sadly not. No, this is due to the magic of the catalogue, because the sale's about to take place as we record this show.
Yeah.
And there are some truly beautiful things there, some 1920s radiator mascots. That's in the automobilia section, Paul. And one that particularly took my fancy was a gorgeous Lalique glass eagle. Unfortunately, the guide price of around €1,200 means that it's unlikely to be gracing my desk anytime soon.
That's loose change for you.
I tell you what, there was a fabulous bronze. It was by Chris Davis. It's a Fangio in the Maserati 250F. It was cast in 2001. It's number 2 of only 5 that he did. And it's gorgeous. They're expecting €6,000 for that little beauty.
Really? And, of course, you used to race a 250F, didn't you?
Well, I don't like to boast, but how long have you got? Set yourself down and I'll tell you all about it.
No, sadly, no time at all. Moving along then.
Oh, okay then. Well, the cars entered in the Paris sale, they're a bit of a mixture. There's from a 1985 Mercedes G-Wagon, a 64 tractor. So I'm cynically not entirely sure that they fit all of them into the Great Marques theme. That might be stretching things a bit. I tell you, though, I immediately spotted a very pretty 1960 Austin Healey Frog Eye Sprite in race trim.
Oh, no, you're talking.
Yeah, the guide's 20,000 to 30,000, and I'd have said that it's a very nice buy at the lower end of those two figures if you can. Yeah, there's the inevitable 1980s Mercedes SL. That's a model that's seen a lot of movement in prices over the last few years. This is, of course, the R107 generation, launched in 71, and that ran all the way through to 1989. That was a long run for the model. That replaced the gorgeous old Pagoda. They fetch decent sums now, those 107s in the right kind of condition, and rightly so, because it's fabulous engineering and lovely build quality, of course, but they can be very prone to rust, and a poor one, well, that's a total money pit. The sale also had a lovely 3.8 Mark II Jaguar, extensively restored, says the catalogue. It's guided at 25,000 to 34,000. Great cars, of course, Paul. I mean, you know them so well. I've seen a few examples recently, though, that they're failing to make the money. So where do you see the market taking them?
Well, as always, Rich, it really comes down to condition and spec. I mean, the 3.8 is obviously the ultimate Mark II, and it will always attract a premium. I mean, I've spoken to some Jaguar specialists over the last few months, funnily enough, who some of them will charge almost a six-figure sum for a beautifully restored 3.8. But, of course, there are cheaper examples out there, especially if you go for a smaller engined model. I think the 3.2 will always be in demand. But, you know, for me, one of the best buys right now is the original S-Type, which, as you know, it ran alongside the Mark II for a few years. And it had the added advantage of independent rear suspension. It drove superbly as a result, thanks to that. And yet a decent one, you know, it can be half the price of a Mark II.
That's interesting. Back to Paris, meanwhile. I can't close this report without mentioning one of the true exotics at the sale. Now, all the good stuff's here in abundance. Bugatti, Ferrari, Porsche, Alfa. But my personal pick is the impossibly glamorous 1956 Facel Vega, an FV2 coupe. Sterling Moss, of course, drove a Facel Vega.
Yeah.
So did Ringo Starr.
Really? I didn't know that.
A real movie star car. Expected to make £150,000. Worth every penny, I'd say. Just lovely. Oh, yeah. Let me just squeeze in that the auctioneers also have some really lovely race paintings in the sale too, and I mean really lovely. But, I reckon there are a few things tougher than explaining a painting over the radio.
You could be right.
Yeah, so go to bonhams.com if you fancy a look at their catalogue.
I'm going to do that later.
We'll be back in a moment, so don't go away.
In the years that I've been living, a lot of things have surely changed. A lot of things have come and gone, some even came back again. But through all the many changes, some things are for sure. And you know that mighty fine feeling kind of makes me feel secure, because I love baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet. Baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet. They go together in the good old USA. Baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet.
In case you're wondering, this message is brought to you by baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and America's favorite.
You're listening to Classic Car Talk with Paul and Richard.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Now, Rich, something that's been in the news recently is the forthcoming merger of two of today's car giants. I'm talking PSA Group of France and Fiat Chrysler Automobiles.
Yeah, that's an interesting move. I mean, for years, Fiat Chrysler have been looking for some kind of deal, I believe.
Yeah, they have. But this particular merger, it means a lot of very different brands suddenly being part of one huge group. In fact, once the merger is complete, this will be the world's fourth largest car company, would you believe?
Yeah, well, of course, PSA Group is already the owner of Peugeot and Citroën.
Yeah, and of course, in more recent times, Opel and Vauxhall.
Yeah, absolutely. And Fiat Chrysler automobiles have, well, obviously Fiat and Chrysler.
Of course.
but also Italy's Alfa Romeo and Maserati and Lancia, as well as America's Jeep and Dodge brands. So it's going to be a heck of a job bringing them all together.
Well, it is, but, the signs are pretty good. I mean, PSA have made a success of the Opel Vauxhall purchase, transforming what was a loss-making company under General Motors into one that's already profitable.
Yeah, fair enough. But, Paul, we chat about old cars here at Classic Car Talk, so what's this all got to do with us?
Well, it's funny you say that, because I was thinking the other day, this coming together of PSA and Chrysler is, as Shirley Bassey might have put it, it's a little bit of history repeating.
I saw what you did there. Oh, dear Shirley.
I suppose she's a mate of yours. I mean, every time I mention anyone famous, you've either worked with them, you've had dinner with them, you've been out with them.
It's funny you should say that.
That's enough name-dropping, thank you. Back to Chrysler, because it was back in the 1960s that the American giant, seeing the success of its General Motors and Ford rivals here in Europe, they decided they wanted a slice of that same pie. I mean, Chrysler then, they had no real presence in Europe after all.
Yeah, I remember. So this was when Chrysler bought the Roots Group, wasn't it?
That's right.
The British company, of course, with brands like Hillman and Humber, Singer and Sunbeam.
Yeah, spot on. Prior to that, of course, Chrysler had also acquired Simca of France. So by the late 60s, both Roots and Simca found themselves being rebranded as Chrysler Europe.
Yeah, it was interesting, wasn't it? Because although it was Chrysler Europe, the old names, they stayed in use for a few years. I mean, the Simca 1100 hatchback, that was still a Simca.
Yeah.
And then the Imp and the Avenger and the Hunter, they were still Hillmans.
They were. I mean, it took a while for the Chrysler name to be used on the cars themselves. That is true. Although from the end of the 60s, you'd see Chrysler and the famous Pentastar logo, of course, appearing in adverts and brochures.
Yeah, brochures. I'm a wild guess here. I just suppose, being a total anorak, you've got quite a collection of those brochures, haven't you?
It's funny you say that. Actually, Rich, you must call in and have a look through my filing cabinets one day.
Yeah, must I?
Okay, maybe not. The invitation's withdrawn. But yeah, in the early 70s, you'd find models like the Imp and the Avenger still wearing Hillman badges, although the overall marketing was very much a Chrysler message. I tell you what, let's have a listen to this classic advert from back then.
Who can make you happy? Who can make you happy when you buy a car? When you buy a car?
You'll be very happy with an Imp from your Chrysler man. Or the front-wheel drive Simca 1100 with an extra door in the back to give you estate car capacity. And the Hunters, roomy and reliable. Yet Hunters are economical to run.
the luxurious Chrysler 2-litre.